This is going to be video number 104 on your firearms defense channel. This video is being made at the request of I Carry a Big 45, and this video is going to be about Christopher Newsom and Channon Christian. Okay, I decided to do this one by pulling up the Wikipedia facts about this, and I'm going to read what Wikipedia says about this, and I'm going to do some of my own commentary here and different thoughts that I have on this subject. Okay, here's the Wikipedia, what it says about it. Channon Gale Christian, 21, and Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr., 23, were a couple from Knoxville, Tennessee. They were raped, tortured, and murdered after being kidnapped early on the morning of January 7, 2007. Their vehicle had been carjacked. 5 suspects were arrested and charged in the case. The grand jury indicted 4 of the suspects on counts of capital murder, robbery, kidnapping, rape, and theft. A 5th was indicted on the federal level. Of the 4 charged at the state level, 3, Latavius D. Cobbins, Lamarcus Davison, and George Thomas, had multiple prior felony convictions. After a jury trial, Lamarcus Davison was sentenced to death by lethal injection, and Latavius Cobbins and George Thomas were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vanessa Coleman has been convicted of facilitating the crimes and sentenced to 53 years in prison, and Eric Dwayne Boyd has been convicted of federal charges as accessory after the fact to carjacking and sentenced to 18 years in prison. The state convictions have since been set aside because of misconduct by the presiding judge, who has since been disbarred. Retrials, pending appeals in all except the Coleman case, whose retrial is not being contested, are currently slated for the summer and fall of 2012. Victims. Christian moved from Louisiana to Tennessee with her family in 1997. She was a graduate of Farragut High School and a senior majoring in sociology at the University of Tennessee. In 2008, a golf tournament and memorial foundation were established in Channon Christian's memory to provide a scholarship for the Farragut High School senior to attend the University of Tennessee. Newsom, a former baseball player for the Halls High School Red Devils, graduated in 2002. He was interred at Woodhaven Memorial Gardens. A Little League baseball tournament in Newsom's honor was held at the Halls Community Park in 2008 and 2009. A memorial scholarship is given annually to a graduating Halls High School baseball player. Crime. Christian and Newsom had gone on a date at a local restaurant on Saturday, January 6, 2007, but did not return home. During their night out, the couple were carjacked, bound, and blindfolded by 3 men and taken to Lamarcus Duval Slim Davidson's rented house on Chipman Street. Christian's parents found her abandoned Toyota 4Runner 2 blocks away from the Chipman Street house the following Monday with the help of her mobile phone provider. An envelope recovered from the vehicle yielded fingerprint evidence that led police to Lamarcus Davison and 2316 Chipman Street. When police went to the address on Tuesday, January 9th, they found the house unoccupied and Christian's body in a bin in the kitchen. According to the testimony of the Knox County Acting Medical Examiner, Dr. Dorinka Lucas Polkman, at the subsequent trial of Eric Boyd, Newsom was repeatedly sodomized with an object and then blindfolded, gagged, arms and feet bound, and his head covered. Barefoot, he was dragged outside the house to a set of nearby railroad tracks. He was shot in the back of his head, neck, and back, and his body was then set on fire. According to the testimony of the medical examiner, Channon's death came after hours of torture, having suffered injuries to her vagina, anus, and mouth. She was raped with an unidentified object and beaten in the head. It was also reported that her body was scrubbed with bleach, which was also poured down her throat in an attempt by her attackers to remove DNA evidence while Channon was still alive. She was then bound with curtains and strips of bedding, her face covered with a bin liner and her body stashed within five large bin bags, before being placed inside a residential waste disposal unit and covered with sheets. The medical examiner said there was evidence Channon slowly suffocated to death. The suspects and indictments. The four indicted were George Giovanni Detroit Thomas, 24, faced a total of 46 charges. Thomas was indicted on 16 counts of felony murder growing out of the rape, robbery, kidnapping, and theft of Christian and Newsom, 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of especially aggravated robbery, 4 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, 20 counts of aggravated rape, and 20 counts of theft. Latalvis Rome Cobans, 28, faced the same 46 charges as Thomas. He has also been charged with assaulting a correctional officer while incarcerated pending trial. In 2003, Cobans was convicted of third-degree attempted robbery in New York State. He and Davidson are brothers. Coben was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lamarcus Duval Slim Davidson, 30, faced the same 46 counts as Thomas. Previously, Davidson had just completed a 5-year sentence in Tennessee on a previous felony conviction for carjacking and aggravated robbery on August 5, 2006. Vanessa Coleman, 18, was arrested by the Lebanon Police Department in Lebanon, Kentucky. She faces 40 Tennessee state charges. Coleman was indicted on 12 counts of felony murder growing out of the rape, robbery, kidnapping, and theft of Christian and Newsom. I counted one count of premeditated murder of Christian only, 1 count of especially aggravated robbery of Newsom only, 4 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, 20 counts of aggravated rape, 2 counts of theft. She was convicted and sentenced to 53 years in prison on July 30, 2010. She described her time in Knoxville as an adventure. In each indictment, the large number of rape counts were included to provide a range of options for prosecutors, not to reflect the number of rapes which actually occurred. Eric Dwayne E. Boyd, 34, was arrested in connection with the fatal carjacking, though not indicted by the Knox County Grand Jury. Boyd faced federal charges in the United States District Court as an accessory after the fact of helping the suspects evade the police. Later, Boyd was also accused by Thomas and Cobans of rape and murder, and a search warrant was obtained for his DNA. The accusations of Thomas and Cobans did not result in state charges against Boyd, but he is serving 18 years in federal prison on his conviction as an accessory to the carjacking. First trials. The 4 suspects indicted in Knox County were originally scheduled to be tried separately at trial scheduled between May and August 2008. In February 2008, the trial date for the suspects indicted in Knox County was moved to 2009. Judge Richard Baumgartner allowed Thomas and Cobans to be tried by juries from Nashville, Davidson County. In an apparent attempt to force the prosecution to try the case with the least forensic evidence first, the attorneys for Thomas filed a motion for a speedy trial, arguing there was no forensic link between their client and the crime scene. Thomas was granted the motion and was scheduled to go to trial on August 11, 2008. Judge Baumgartner ruled that Thomas' phone calls made from the jailhouse to his acquaintances were admissible as evidence. District Attorney Randy Nichols announced that the state would seek the death penalty for both Cobans, the first to go to trial, and Coleman if convicted. Davidson was also indicted for a second robbery, which was committed after the murders. The publicity against the accused led the defense to argue that a change of venue was required in order to ensure a fair trial. The state argued that an impartial jury could be found during voir dire, and the presiding judge subsequently denied the motion as premature. Judge Baumgartner threatened to ban the Newsom family from the courtroom after Davidson's attorney, Doug Tramp, was called a jerk after interrupting a discussion among the family. On April 16, 2008, Eric Boyd was found guilty in federal court of being an accessory to a fatal carjacking and for failing to report the location of a known fugitive. Boyd was the first case to go to trial, and he was the only suspect not charged with murder. He was sentenced to the maximum of 18 years in federal prison. He is currently incarcerated at Beckley FCI. On August 25, 2009, Latalvis D. Colvins was found guilty of the murders of Channon, Christian, and Christopher Newsom. Colvins faced the possibility of the death penalty because he was convicted of first-degree felony murder in the case of Christian. He was found guilty of facilitation of murder for Newsom, but he was acquitted of Newsom's rape. The jury worked about 10 hours Monday and on Tuesday morning before reaching a verdict. On August 25th, Colvins was sentenced to life without parole. On October 28, 2009, Lamarcus Duvall Davidson was found guilty on all counts. He was found not guilty on 3 counts of the aggravated rape of Christopher Newsom, but was found guilty on the lesser charge, including charges of facilitation of rape. The jury sentenced Lamarcus Davidson to death on 4 of the conviction counts. On December 8, 2009, George Thomas was found guilty on all counts, including the ones the other defendants were acquitted of, despite his case being based solely on circumstantial evidence and testimony. The jury returned a sentence of life without the possibility of parole on each of the 4 capital convictions. The convictions of Boyd, Colvins, Davidson, and Thomas left Vanessa Coleman as the last defendant to face trial. Coleman's case is complicated with the fact that while she was granted immunity by federal authorities for testimony in the federal case on the carjacking, the state courts have ruled that the federal grant of immunity does not extend to the state charges on murder and rape. On May 13, 2010, Coleman was acquitted of first-degree murder but found guilty on lesser charges. On July 30, 2010, she was sentenced to 53 years behind bars. Appeals and retrials. The defendants in the state cases, excluding Eric Boyd, who was convicted at the federal level, all appealed their convictions. During this time, the sentencing judge, Richard Baumgartner, one of Knox County's 3 criminal court judges, was forced to resign from the bench in March of 2011 after admitting he had a drug addiction and had been having sex and purchasing pills during breaks in court sessions, thus impairing his ability to conduct trials during his final 2 years on the bench and compromising all trials he held during this time, including the initial trials reviewed above. Baumgartner has since been disbarred and is under federal investigation. On December 1, 2011, 7 weeks after Baumgartner's disbarment became final, Judge John Kerry Blackwood granted new trials to all 4 state defendants after a TBI investigation outlined evidence that Baumgartner was likely impaired while presiding over those trials. Other criminal cases heard during this time period were also overturned for retrial. Jurors expressed dissatisfaction with the decision, noting that they, not Baumgartner, who favored the defense during the trial, convicted the killers. Blackwood tentatively set retrials for between June and November 2012, pending state appeals of the decision, and set bail at $1 million for Coleman, the only defendant who did not receive a sentence with no chance of parole. Separately, Blackwood denied a change of venue, but did allow for potential jurors to be brought in from outside of Knox County. Because of double jeopardy, the defendants will only face the sentences they already received at maximum. As such, only Davidson can face capital punishment. The decision to hold retrials for Coleman's, Davidson, and Thomas, the decision to retry Coleman was not appealed, was affirmed in a split decision by the Tennessee Court of Appeals on April the 13th. A decision on whether to appeal a criminal appeals decision has not been made. Reactions and accusations of racism. The national news media was criticized for allegedly ignoring the story because the victims were white and the suspects black. Most news reports came from local media and online news sites. This criticism was also fueled by erroneous early reports of dismemberment and mutilations. Most of the original reports with misinformation reported from a federal deputy U.S. Marshal after the suspect's arrest in Kentucky were later denied by the district attorney. The president of Criminal Justice Journalists, an association of crime, court, and prison writers, editors, and producers, said, "I can't say this one would have had any more coverage if 5 whites had been accused of doing these things to 2 blacks, absent a blatant racial motive, as bad as this crime is. The apparent absence of any interest group involved or any other angle might also explain the lack of coverage." Police Chief Sterling Owen IV said there is no indication the crimes were racially motivated and that the murders and assaults appear to have been a random violent act. "There is absolutely no proof of a hate crime," said John Gill, special counsel to Knox County District Attorney Randy Nichols. "We know from our investigation that the people charged in this case were friends with white people, socialized with white people, dated white people. So not only is there no evidence of any racial animus, there is evidence to the contrary." Some commentators continue to disagree, claiming that such a crime would include a motive of racial hatred. Conservative political commentator Michelle Malkin repeated this accusation on her blog and on Fox News' O'Reilly Factor program. Prior to the DA's statement, Newsom's mother sympathized with the hate crime position, stating, "It may have started out as a carjacking, but what it developed into was blacks hating whites." Christian's father, addressing those whom he believes uses his daughter's death to further their own agenda, stated, "The crime ain't about you." The case also attracted the attention of white supremacists. On May 27, 2007, around 30 white supremacists led by Alex Linder rallied in downtown Knoxville in protest to the murders. They were met by a large number of counter-protesters, many dressed as clowns parodying the Ku Klux Klan. After the protest, syndicated columnist Leonard Pitts dismissed claims that the crime was underreported, citing a 2001 report that found blacks and Latinos are underrepresented in news media as victims of crimes and significantly overrepresented as predators. Pitts added that he was unkindly disposed toward the crackpots, incendiaries, and flat-out racist to have chosen this tragedy upon which to take an obscene and ludicrous stand, and that they and any other white Americans who felt victimized by the perceived underreporting could cry me a river. The house at 2316 Shipman Street was bought by Waste Connections, a national garbage collection company with a depot next door to the east, in the fall of 2008. Waste Connections subsequently demolished the house and replaced it with a simple memorial to Newsom and Christian. On October 16, 2009, an October 16, 2009 article in the Daily Mail stated, Ironically, the case has now generated more publicity surrounding the furor over whether or not political correctness was behind the U.S. media's decision to largely ignore the story than it did for the murders themselves. The same article quoted commentator Michelle Malkin as saying, "This case, an attractive white couple murdered by 5 black thugs, doesn't fit any political agenda. It's not a useful crime. Reverse the races and just imagine how the national media would cover the story of a young black couple murdered by 5 white assailants." Okay, that's what Wikipedia reported about it, and as to the actual facts involved in this case, I think Wikipedia's version is probably as close to the actual facts as we could get. Now, here's my commentary on the whole thing. As far as any and all racial issues involved, I don't care what the racial issues are. I don't care what issues anybody wants to make of it. Here's my issues in the matter. The media and the police and the judicial system all have one thing in common. They are all totally, completely useless and worthless. They failed all the way along the line in this matter. The police did not prevent the crime. The media reported it after the fact. The police took the report after the fact, and everything else is done after the fact. So the judicial system, the judge that tried this case failed too. He was a drug user and a pervert and a degenerate. The judicial system failed this case. They're going to have to retry these pukes. That's going to cost millions of dollars, you know. So everybody failed. To me, that's the issue involved. Everybody here failed. It's not a black issue. It's not a white issue. I'm not a racist either way. I don't care about any of that. Front Sight, where I train, is not the least bit racially prejudiced or motivated, although Pahrump, Nevada is probably predominantly white, but other than that, Front Sight has blacks trained there. They have black instructors. They're not racially prejudiced. So that's my take on this, and the police and the news and the judicial system are all totally worthless, and they all failed. There's one thing that would have prevented this. Channon and Christian should have had concealed carry. They should have been carrying if they would have been carrying, which in Knoxville, Tennessee would have been easy. They could have both been carrying. This story would have had a completely different outcome. Now, you look at pictures of this nice young couple, this handsome young 20-something couple, and you say, they shouldn't have to carry, you know. Shouldn't. Oh, let me show you something here. These are 2 issues of Concealed Carry magazine I have. Now, look at that little sweetie on the front of this Concealed Carry magazine. Pretty little thing with a holster and telling how she carries. Look at this one. Yeah, a little sweetheart there with her baby and her Glock. So far as I'm concerned, that's a solution for this whole problem right here. Everybody start getting trained, everybody start carrying, violent crime occurs, people start getting killed that commit violent crime. That's a solution to this problem right there. And this is Firearms Defense signing off on video number 104, and thank you to I Carry a Big 45 for requesting this video, and I'll see you on video number 105.